All right, this is our 11th digital painting video. This will be the final one in the sequence because we're just submitting now. But I wanted to show you what I'm asking you to submit, which is just a reference photo. Even if you altered the reference photo, I warped this one, I tilted it a little bit, but it's the primary reference photo I used to make this digital painting, and then just a JPEG of your digital painting in whatever composition you like. I kind of like this off-center composition with a lot of white space. So we put those up to Photo Bucket, right? You label them with your name. Now this is what's kind of fun. Once you've submitted it, you can acknowledge all the different aspects that built your digital painting, from the ground up. So your base painting layers, your blending layers. No. So I'm showing you now, you don't need to just have this as your only version of the digital painting. You can also use it as something you composite with. So I can take that Wayne Thiebaud, I can bring it in as a background element. Stretch it. Basically, play with abstractions and kind of pushing elements like this down through your layers, right? You can play with things like, it looks like he's urinated on a metal plate now. And this is the oxidation. So by just making it a blank background, we can do lots of different games and playing with compositing in a background, different textures, just like we did for your poster. Your digital painting is basically a spot illustration that we're playing with. We can also merge it all together if we turn off the background, right? We can go to the top viewing layer, hold down Option, and say Layer Merge Visible to give us a merged version. And then we can simply play with the saturation of it. I can intensify the colors. I can play with the hue of it. We have the blue corgi, the purple corgi, whatever it might be. And very often, just because of the references you are stealing colors from, you might want to push the colors a little bit to the left or the right on the hue spectrum. You might want to play with their saturation a little bit. But ultimately, if you did a good job digital painting, when you take the saturation all the way down, you're still able to see what it is clearly. And this can kind of show you some flaws in it as well. But color is obviously very important in painting. Other things we can do. This is kind of my favorite. Now that we have a combined layer, we can take the blended paint layer, we can duplicate it, and we can move it up above, right? And it's just kind of layering over layers. But now with that copy of the blended paint layer, I can play with maybe color balance, more subtle color adjustments. And I can push them different ways. So like I said, because it's digital, it has a lot more versatility and a lot of life after you're done painting. Now, maybe this is because I worked as a framer through college, but after you're done with a painting, there's all the framing, there's all the matting, there's all the making it look good on the wall. And that's this is the digital equivalent of that. Like playing with these different options, compositing different textures together. I may take the same thing again, bring it in again, and overlay it in a different way with a very different color. I'll just do something dramatic here so you can see, like invert it. Kind of like that. And then I can try different layer styles with it. Woohoo. And then maybe over the top of all of that, I just do a simple fill. And this is how you can add abstraction to it. So then the other obvious thing you can do is you can start taking away. God, this is so cheesy looking. It's that rainbow still. I kind of like those stripes. All right. It's like he's in a window. I don't know. So, oops, I'm going to try duplicating that to kind of build it up. That's too much. So let's instead fill that with white, because sometimes subtlety really matters. And I'm just playing right now. Dissolve it, waiting for you guys to submit. Take that down. It's looking very 80s. Nice 80s corgi. Okay, now with that new blended layer, I actually like how that's kind of brightened him up a little bit. It's given some new tones. But then if I feel like it's gotten too dark in some places, I can go ahead and dodge it or burn it. Do you remember all these skills? And I can do it to the highlights. And I can even do it with a textured brush if I want. Bring out the highlights in the eyes, get more color that way. This is all not adding anything, just adjusting what you already have. Right? And then if I feel like that whole head is a little too yellow, I can just take part of it, because that's because of that Sargent overlay, and go to color balance and push that down, especially in the highlights, and bring it back. So that's a pretty big difference to the face, but I like it. I think it stands out a little bit more by adding new layers. So the other obvious thing I can do is I can start taking things away. Now, you see that distortion or that dissolve filter, which gives me these little white pixels everywhere? That's fine, but it's a little distracting. But if I want that effect, it's dissolve here. What I can do is I rasterize that layer style, and then I can just really lightly gouge and blur it. So they're not solid pixels anymore. Instead, it's just this kind of speckly, almost paper texture. See that? That's a really good way to make things not look so digital, so smooth and flat. And now there's no way that someone's going to recognize that background as Wayne Thiebaud, right? Does that make sense? And I've covered up the low resolution of having to enlarge kind of a low reference. I'm not so sure about the stripes, but it's interesting, right? And if I wanted to, I could rasterize that layer style, and I can gouge and blur that out so it's softer. I could even warp it so it's less rigid. Yeah, I think that helps, right? So that might be a full painted version that I just was very quickly able to put underneath my digital painting. So if that's one way, I might save this. I'll save this as the PSD with a background. This is not something I'm assigning you to do. I'm just showing you because this might be a way you work for your final project, and I'll be working with each of you individually on that. Next, I can abstract it by taking away. And the things I'll take away, first will be those background elements, but then maybe the base paint I can take away, right? And then maybe that gray shape, but I kind of need that. But maybe I make this Gaussian blurred. Right? And then maybe I offset, I copy some of these blended elements and then warp them a little bit. I'm going to get a fluffier dog this way. And then play individually with their hue saturation. Let's go with that. Right? Then I can, of course, play with opacity or blending styles. Make a duplicate of the blended paint on top. I can even just take away some of these others. That's something different. And then I can just erase.
Weren't you talking about using the CMYK dots?
Oh yeah, I could do CMYK dots. There's so much, right? You guys get the idea. But ultimately, it can be fun to just take it to its rawest elements, like this, and feel the freedom of these as compositional elements, because they're all your own strokes of paint, right? That you can use in different ways. To make even a non-representational painting. Kind of interesting. This is looking now like kind of a minimalist stain painting. There we go. All right. And that's all. Okay, so let's go to Photo Bucket now. And let's see what you guys have done. So I'm going to go to the instructor demonstrations under Digital 1 assignments for our final project that I am scoring, which is number 9. And I'm going to bring these in. I'm not ready to bring Nina Simone in yet because I didn't get to bring up the finish. So what's the big difference between Nina Simone and the Corgi? I was able to bring a finish everywhere with the Corgi. And that's important. So I'll just show you some of the examples from last semester where I just did them outside of class. So I just let my experimentation go wild. So that's a fairly representational digital painting, right? Then I stripped away a little bit. I kind of liked better how it looked without some of the base painting elements. And then I actually played with it enough in digital that I started to get glitches happening in Photoshop. And then did screen grabs of the glitches and then incorporated that back in to get a pretty interesting non-representational painting, right? Which are all my own pixels. Here's kind of a watercolor one. Here's more of an acrylic painting one, right? Yeah, they're all people. Ooh. And then animals. This is some weird real animal. It's the weirdest thing ever. I'm trying to find the ones I just put in.
Oh, yeah, you know how.
There they are. All right, so what do? Well, you guys know how to title them. So FA18, your name, and then 1 for your reference. And then FA18, your name, and number 2 for your digital painting with a white background or a gray background. All right, we'll start our critique.